That's what you pay me
You're the
for,
one making
right?
that happen. I'm just your cheerleader. So I'm just cheerleader. So you can tell all the great things you've been doing, and then when you don't brag on yourself enough, I'll add a few things.
Okay, that's great. So I'm just going to start off so that our audience knows I'm speaking to Greg Massey and Kara Bird, who I worked with in Durant, Oklahoma. The last time I saw them in person, I think, was 2017. And Greg started Imagine Durant, and Kara came in and became the executive director. And they did wonderful things in the 4 years that I worked with them. And they have flashed forward and want to tell me now in 2021 what's happened since I last saw you. So, Kara, I gather you're going to start. What's happened since I last saw you?
So, Marilyn, it's great to see you again. We definitely missed your presence and your vibrancy and just who you are as a person and what you carry here in Durant. We're so glad we get to connect with you today. But, you know, one of the things that was really important with us is when we did our work with you, we listened to the community and we did that 3 years of visioning and created that strategic plan to really know how we need to lead our community forward. And, you know, that really could not have come at a better time, specifically with knowing where our community and our world is, you know, with COVID that happened in 2020, nobody could have predicted something like that. So I'm so grateful that we had the opportunity to sit down as a community and do a strategic plan and a visioning process, you know, led by your integral theory meshwork. So since that plan has been implemented, we actually brought in something called a Blue Zones project. And I'm sure that you are very much so aware of it, but for anyone who might be listening, you know, Blue Zones project was started by Dan Buettner, who worked with National Geographic. And when he was traveling with them, he found 5 places where people were living healthier, happier lives. And he started to research that and figure out exactly how that was the case, because geographically nothing was the same with them. They were all over. And he really found that by their power of 9, they, you know, were living longer and healthier because they moved naturally. They had a sense of purpose. They ate a plant-based diet. They had a strong connection with others. There was just so many things within that. And he ended up saying, well, can we do that here? So when we found out about the Blue Zones project, we started looking at it, and it really hit that strategic plan that we had. So, you know, out of that strategic plan, we had a learning for all, a healthy and connected culture, a vibrant and thriving community. And the Blue Zones project really hit 70% of that. And we knew what we needed to do and why we needed to do it based off of the research and development that we had gone through the visioning process. And the Blue Zones project was really the how. So we ended up launching Blue Zones in 2020, you know, which was very interesting to launch a program and a project like that in the middle of a pandemic. But they just finished their blueprint and they actually have their kickoff month this month. So that's one of the biggest things that's come out of the work that we have done with Imagine Durant and the visioning process that we started with you. And there's of course been other initiatives along the way, but to me, that's one of our really big wins, is having something like that be able to come to the table. And it's really based off of the visioning and the foundation that we were able to set with Imagine Durant.
Oh, thank you, Kara. You know, my heart is really open to hear this story because you not only had these 3 beautiful intersecting circles, but in the center of your strategic plan was that heart, that care. And I have told your story to so many people, and the caring sounds like it lines right up with the Blue Zone strategy as well. So I'm so happy to hear that.
Thank you.
Greg, did you want to say what have you been doing from the perspective of the board? And I know Kara's just such an activating person, but also I'm sure she depends on you and the team that you brought together to Imagine Durant.
You know, it's interesting, Stage, because you know, I look back 5 years ago when we truly created the vision with you, Marilyn, and there's so many things that are happening at one time. And like great strategy, it's not one thing that makes a vibrant community. It's all these multiple perspectives. So, you know, and she, you know, Kara really highlighted, you know, one of the big projects with the Blue Zones, which is a lot about living and well-being of our citizens and how that activates the whole community. And then also what we've done from just getting the community to thrive as a community, be more vibrant. So our downtown project has done really, really well. Could not be more proud of our main street and how much, that was one of the key conversations you remember we had, that was we've got to make our community come together from, a central point. And so that's really has happened in a big way in the leadership of that team. We've really done a lot with the care of our youth. Today, I believe we might have the best Boys and Girls Club in the United States. It's beautiful. Incredible the job that they, a guy named Larry Long came into the community who was just a true blessing, and what he's done with that. Karen's been working really hard from, a housing perspective. The community has really grown, and we're still struggling with this housing issue. And we just cannot keep up with the number of people moving into the community and the type of homes that they need. So there's a lot of work trying to figure out, okay, what do we do about that? And of course, doing a lot of work with our tribal community with the Choctaw Nation, and they've been very helping with that as well. So it's all these like different things that are happening at once that really start really doing something. It's one of our big projects. We hired a guy named Greg Engel that you worked with.
I remember.
So he's actually created what's called Spend Life Wisely Academy here through our organization that's connecting with how to actually build healing organizations inside of our community. Mm-hmm. So working with our business leaders about how to actually create work environments that really heals people. It makes them, so they come to work and they learn things and learn leadership, and they become, I hate to say better human beings, but they see it maybe from a broader perspective. And kind of our belief is if we can create, 12 to 15 healing organizations inside of our community, you really start changing the work environments. And, so many of us spend so much time of our day in our work environments. And so we can change what that looks like in our community. We think we've made a big progress as well. So you kind of think about education and you think about the main, what's happening in Main Street. You think about how we care for each other through the Blue Zone community, what we're doing in our work environments. All those are starting to collide together. And I think over the next, 4 or 5 years, people will wake up and going, how did this actually happen? Because it's not this one thing, it's all these things converging together.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. Well, it is really inspiring because I remember that when we left the strategic plan ready to unfold, what I am able to show people is, you had identified champions for each of those directions and areas in the strategy. And I hear those names in your stories that you're sharing with me now. So the continuity of that and the commitment to a city that is well as at its core, and then translate that into the businesses, that's amazing. And also, I love the story about the youth. And I would be curious to know about the early wind projects that you started off. One was related to the Trails project, and another was related to even parks. Have those also had some ways to unfold?
So Marilyn, the Trails Project, it started its own organization. It became the Durant Trails and Open Space. They're their own 501c3, and they're the ones who are really holding that master plan that was created by the National Park Service with Imagine Durant. And so they're able to move those forward. But one of the great things that I would say that came out of that is, you wanted to talk about the connectivity. So, Imagine Durant really works to align our stakeholders and have community collaboration between everyone. And with us being able to hold that the stakeholders together collaboratively working, but also hold the frame of the vision for our community, it helps us to move forward. So, we have a newer city manager. He's only been here 2 years, but whenever he came in, he started making some infrastructure changes based off of what, we all knew that we needed here. But one of the things that he did is he repaved 5th Street. And if you remember, Marilyn, 5th Street was our connector to our college. So whenever he repaved that, I called him and I said, hey, don't forget that needs a bike lane, because that's part of the trails plan that we were, adopted as the city and things like that. And that's also a way that you connect your college students to your downtown and things like that. So you have seen some of those wins, but the biggest part is just making sure that all of those entities are having those conversations, and that we as Imagine Durant are able to keep that frame there for them and align the stakeholders in those priorities. So yes, we have seen wins that have come out of those different organizations with the Durant Trails and open space. The parks, they've actually started based off of some of our strategic planning, knowing that they're wanting to have comprehensive park plans. There's been conversations happening within the city in that, but also they've been looking for grants specifically to bring in new equipment to our parks that update our parks based off of what the community members are saying that they want. So that's been great.
That's great. Sounds like what you were saying, Greg, when moving to the lake, that the rest of the community now can do a lot more walking around, which is what they wanted.
Well, and you know, I think the another win there that Kara is talking about is just the communications between our, you know, we call it civic managers, but we have a wonderful city manager now that's really, Kara's done a great job of building relationships. So that, you know, he's open to these conversations. Our superintendent, who was here when you were here, Marilyn, Dwayne Meredith, has continued to be super engaged with us. Ron Boyer, our county commissioner. So the civic managers have all stayed involved and connected, and has really helped us to progress these things. And then, you know, the nonprofit world as well, you know, from, you know, the Boys and Girls Club, et cetera. So this interconnectivity of all these different voices of the community coming together and working together, and then Kara being able to hold this longer term perspective is, as we make decisions in the community, it's made a huge difference.
Yeah, I love your story that it's combining what I call the four voices of the city, the citizens, and you're working with the Boys and Girls Club. That's really exciting because I remember they were starting to take that active role when I was there. And then your civic managers, and I tell sometimes the story that we had more than one mayor and more than one city manager, even while I was in the project. It sounds like that's continued, but because you have Imagine Durant, you're able to ground change no matter where. And then with the businesses that you're talking about, I love the idea that you're working on the healing and well-being. I know in the places I connect to now that are trying to deal with the pandemic and the aftermath or the lockdowns, it's just so important that businesses really have this way of addressing healing and trauma. And then the not-for-profit organizations that have become their own. I mean, it's wonderful that the Early Win has become its own organization. That's also really inspiring. It just shows all the many ways that you've grown, not just step by step, I would say, leaping over tall buildings in a single bound some days.
But I'll tell you, Kara's done a wonderful job of going where the energy is. So as you mentioned, as city managers have changed, mayors have changed, new college president has changed, and they all come in with, you know, different, you know, things that they want to accomplish. And so we've always tried to marry them and say, okay, where's their energy at? And how does that energy connect with our long-term vision? And then instead of trying to fight something, let's go with it and try to figure out just how do we win-win all the time. And so I think that's been a real lesson for us with this longer term vision, and just kind of trying to connect with their energy and the energy of the community as well, and intersect those things.
Kara, you've always been good at creating events to keep people involved. Can you tell me some of the things that you've been doing in the last year around events that have drawn people in to support your views and visions?
Well, you know, it's a little bit different for 2020 with COVID and having events during that time. One thing I will say, and it's not necessarily around events, but our community really thrived during COVID. You know, we were blessed that instead of having businesses shut down, we had businesses opening during a pandemic. That's not something that you saw everywhere else. And we were really blessed that our community members came behind and supported. And, you know, we could go into tons of stories about, you know, the care part of our strategic plan that you talked about, and how our biggest asset is our people and how they really stepped up during that. But events during COVID didn't really happen. You know, we were planning kickoff events for the Blue Zones project that's actually just started this last month, because, you know, the COVID restrictions are starting to lessen a little bit more. But one of the things that we've started to work on is actually activating a plan for our tourism. And so we brought in a consultant named Roger Brooks, who actually came in and he did secret shop our entire community as a tourist coming out. And he put together a plan of how are we going to really activate and draw tourism here. And, of course, you look at that and you look at your sales tax base and how that helps to fund your infrastructure and how everything is just so integrated, as you already know. But one of the things that we're doing with him is actually talking about how to transform our market square. So if you remember, Marilyn, when you were here, we have this great little, if you will, plaza area that's really utilized for just parking. So we were talking about how do we create events around that, because it already has a stage, it already has bathrooms, it's already got electricity and shade. It was meant for more than just parking, even though parking is an issue here. How do we activate that area to create a place that people can come to, that's placemaking and helps to connect families and community members and things like that. So we're actually just now starting to work with that committee to plan events on activating a place that's really just not been utilized to its full function, if you will. So there's not been a ton of events in 2020, but we're about to hit the ground running for 2021.
Oh, thanks for that story. I do remember the marketplace because I was there a couple of times where you got the market started, and I actually had the fun of going and attending the marketplace. Tell me a little bit more about what you did, though, last year. You're quite right that during the pandemic, you can't have events outside, but you said that you had people just coming forward, and two things that caught me in what you said. One was that people were not only helping each other, tell me in what ways, but there were businesses started up. What kinds of businesses?
So you do not have many vacant spaces in our downtown, Maryland. Our storefronts are just full. I mean, we have there's a brewery that's coming into town that's taken up that entire space that was behind Roma that was just inactive. They are slated to open actually later this month. You have had new boutiques, you have had new restaurants that have come in. As a matter of fact, you would be so happy, Marilyn. We have a vegan restaurant in Durant, Oklahoma. Can you believe it? And it's absolutely delicious. You're going to have to come back and visit us because you would just be thrilled at the progress that we've made. And believe it or not, at the Roadhouse, the steakhouse that's next to us, they're the ones who put it in.
Oh, for heaven's
because
sake.
they saw the need for that. So, you saw that we have a local coffee shop downtown now that people flock to, and you see your college students there studying, or you see business members, having a meeting, or your city council members, meeting with their constituents there. It's just really become a place that's thriving. We actually have a gentleman who's invested quite a bit in downtown property, and he has transformed an alley that's now an art alley, where he has kids come up and actually he donates panels to them to paint, and he'll put the panels up, and he has a active mural place that has been put in, and he's really worked hard to create different incentives for those businesses to come downtown. So that's been really great. But one of the things you asked about was how were people helping people during the pandemic. So I think the pandemic, you saw some of the worst come out in people with things that were happening, but you also saw the best of the best rise. And that I will continue to say it until the day I die. Durant is a small town with a big heart, and the biggest asset is our people, hands down, every time. You saw the schools, they were going and still delivering lunches. They would take a bus and just drop off lunches to students who, they knew that might be their only meal of the day. And now that they were distance learning, they had that. You had businesses who would step up to help provide internet access or computers or things like that for our students who were distance learning. You saw the Catholic charities creating more food boxes to take out to people, in your nonprofits coming together to help go and deliver those. You just saw across the board, neighbors starting to check on their neighbors. Andy and I live in a neighborhood where we actually have elderly people that live next to us, and they're just like our nanas and our papas, if you will. And so we were calling them, hey, can we go to the store for you? We know that you're, at a time where it's very scary for you to go do that. Can we do that for you? And, I think that if anything, the pandemic really taught us that we value people so much more. And, we couldn't wait to actually be able to give people hugs, and we were able to care for our citizens in a different way and in a different light. And it just connected us deeper.
Yeah.
you will.
Yeah, in some ways it doesn't surprise me, but it still warms my heart. And Greg, going back to the board and the businesses, have you had new people come on to the board, or have you kept the board pretty steady? And are you still bringing in the 4 voices to the board? I'd be very curious how you're doing that.
You know, we continue just to rotate board members in and out and finding the different energies inside of the community. And so you'd recognize some of the same faces, and I think you also would be excited about some of the new folks that have come on board as well. And so just, I think every year as we, you know, as people rotate off and in, Kara's done a good job of recruiting different people with different perspectives. And I think that's been really important. The other thing that we've tried to hold as well is how, you know, how do you bring new folks in, but also hold the visioning work that was done.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, one of the things that, you know, I think Kara and I try to hold together is how do you hold both, right? So you hold the new perspectives and new energies, and also all the deep work that we did. Yeah. And how do we allow them to collide? Because the strategy is so big and the vision's so big, I think we were right on to it. And also the world changes over time. So you've got to kind of have a little bit of a balanced approach as we bring in the new folks and the new energies.
Thanks for that insight, Greg. I'm also curious about Chief Batten and the Choctaw Nation, because they were such a big factor in the economy of Durant. And I know those were all kinds of relationships that we explored and used many of their locations and facilities. How are they doing these days?
Doing wonderful. They since you were here last, they're opening another new tower.
Oh my goodness.
Employ another additional 1,000 employees in the new tower.
Wow.
And so, and Kara might know, I don't know how tall it is, but it's a lot taller than the other two. And so I don't know, it's like 20 stories or so. And it's a new tower. So that's all happening right now. And they stay super engaged. And we, of course, we have someone from there that's on our board as well. But more importantly, just, you know, there's a phone call away with whatever thing that we're working on. And, you know, talking a little bit about COVID, first of all, our health department here did an incredible job. We were so ahead of the rest of the United States. I mean, it was, of course, I was worried about my mom and dad, and they were, I mean, just crazy how good a job our actual health department did. And then you had the Choctaw Nation and their health group doing the same thing. So I hate to think how many people in Durant, Oklahoma are vaccinated, but I think the whole town is. I mean, it couldn't have gone any smoother here in Durant, of course, with friends both in Oklahoma City and Dallas and other communities that were having issues. And so it made me really proud of just the people and like Kara said, the, you know, true care you have in the community.
Yeah, that sounds also like an awesome outcome for, you know, we get all kinds of news in where I live in Scotland about what things are working and not working in different parts of the States, but you never hear any of these little gems of stories of like how Kara has brought such life to how you help each other out and how you've actually managed to have the economy thrive and really supporting in the face of real difficulty. So that's really, really inspiring. I am so happy to hear it. I was delighted when you said you'd like to come and tell me a little bit about what's happened, but I didn't know that the stories would be so bright. I'm curious if each of you would like to make any recommendations that I could share with other small cities that are also still interested in the 4 voices of the city and the Master Code of Care. And I tell them it's not just imaginary. It actually can happen in a real city to care for self, others, place, and planet. So what would you recommend to other places that maybe thinking back where we first started, what would you recommend they do?
Yeah, Marilyn, I have a lot of folks ask me that question quite a bit, and I really compliment you, which was the first thing was slow down and listen. And you know, as someone that's more, you know, business minded, says I want to listen for about 2 seconds and then go do something. And really going through the process of listening to the whole community and not just a few voices. And so going through the process, number one, of listening deeply and taking the time to do that in the right way. And then the second thing is, once you have that data, now what did you hear? And then number three is what are you going to do about it? And then have a long enough time frame to do it right. And so, I think we were like a lot of communities around the world that, every time you have a new chamber board or a new civic board, people would have their own aspirations of what to do, but having a 30-year vision versus a 1-year vision made all the difference in the world. So the listening and the long-term perspective, and then creating something in the middle that Imagine Durant to me is almost like middleware. I mean, we are doing in Imagine Durant is connecting those 4 voices together and trying to solve all the problems, but most of the big problems and big issues in the community that tie back to our vision, and just holding the space for the 4 voices to come together and do something with it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thanks. Kara, from your perspective, what would you recommend?
I could not agree more with Greg. I would say one of the things that's really hard is doing that active listening. And, Marilyn, we still use your keys to dialogue, because whenever you do have those stakeholders in the room, sometimes our egos can get in the way and we want what we want and this is how we see it going and so forth. So I think my advice to any community members that would be going through this is to remember that what you're building is for the community and the future generations to come. And sometimes you have to get down in that muck and you have to hear the things that you don't want to hear to be able to really move past it and move forward in a continuous way. And so just to do that, just like Greg said, that deep listening, but also being able to take your ego out of it, because it's a we versus I approach.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, Kara. So I'm just going to suggest that we will wind up this conversation, and I'd like to invite either of you, if there's anything else you'd like to add. I'd love to share it with others who've been very curious about Durant. And as I said, I've continued to tell your story as far as I knew it, but is there anything else that you'd like to share with others?
We love you.
Oh, thank you. I love you too.
Yeah, we truly do. The seeds that you have planted in Durant, Oklahoma will be growing hopefully past not only your life, but all of our lives. And I think when you plant a big enough seed, future generations will see it way past people even know any of our 3 names. So thank you for that seed planting.
Thank you, Greg. Kara, have you got anything you'd like to share?
No, I just agree with Greg. They say that the person that plants a tree not always gets to see the people that reap the shade from that tree. And so thank you so much for being not only someone who planted seeds here, but helped us to take down and find our roots as a community as well, and helping us just decide where we wanted to go and how we were going to get there, and making sure that we stayed on brand with our values in Durant. And you have to come see us, Marilyn, really and truly. You said it's been since 2017. I have 2 kids now. I mean, you have to come back, if nothing else, just to see that.
Or we could go to Scotland. We could go to Scotland.
Or we could go to Scotland. Greg, you have a plane. I'm free.
We could do both, but I just want to thank you not only for the inspiration of originally working with you, but for keeping with the plan. And I just love that you still follow the energy. And yeah, it's contagious. In Findhorn, we say that it's okay for some kinds of contagion. One of them is to infect each other with love. And I think that's something that you do in Durant really well. So thanks so much.